Welcome to Novelist Spotlight. This is Mike Consol, your host. Two quick things before introducing you to my guest. First, I encourage you to subscribe to this podcast by clicking on the follow button and also clicking on the bell icon so you're alerted to each new edition of the program. Second, in addition to being the producer of this podcast and interviewing novelists, I am a novelist myself. I've written 4 books, 3 novels, and 1 short story collection. In the episode notes, you will find a short link to my Amazon page and all 4 of those titles. Now, on with our program. In the spotlight is Yasmin Angoe, the Anthony-nominated author of the critically acclaimed thriller Her Name is Knight. And that is Knight as in a medieval knight, Knight, of the Nena Knight series, which has been optioned for a television series. She is also the author of They Come at Night, again, Knight being Knight. Her Name is Knight also appeared in the New York Times Book Review, OprahDaily.com, PopSugar, Nerd Daily, the Washington Independent Review of Books, The Guardian, and other platforms in addition to those. Yasmin is a first-generation immigrant from Ghana, Africa, and in 2020, she received the Eleanor Taylor Bland Award for Emerging Writers of Color from the organization Sisters in Crime. Yasmin Angoe is a former English teacher and instructional coach. She lives in South Carolina. I believe the license plate says, beautiful places and smiling faces. She lives there with her husband and her children, their children. Yasmin Angoe, welcome to Novelist Spotlight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was a really good intro. Thank you.
I appreciate that. I've been looking forward to this conversation. Let's start with your main character. Tell us about Nena Knight, starting with her name. It's a big decision to name a character, as you know,
Mhm.
especially a lead character. Why Nena and why Knight?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So Nina is a variation of her given name from she's a Ghanaian, which is my culture where my parents are from. And so her name, her original name, that if you read the book, you'll see is Aninye. So Nina comes from that. Which is shorter and I guess easier. And that's the name that she chose when she decided to get into the world of being an assassin. And then Knight actually came from my agent because we were trying to figure out good names for her to have, for her and the family to have. And honestly, the first last name that I had for them was like Goodweather. And so my agent was like, yeah, that's not gonna work, Goodweather. So let's work on something else. And so she and my editor kind of came up with Knight. And they were also thinking like, with the tribal council and everything, it's like Knights at the Round Table, King Arthur, and things like that. So I was like, yeah, that works. I like it.
Yeah, I do too. And it's got some alliteration there, Nena Knight.
Yep.
So works really nicely. But who is Nena Knight ethnically, demographically, and psychographically? Now, ethnically, you mentioned that she's from Ghana. What about and do these really apply to her demographically? Who is she? And certainly psychographically, there'd be something to say about that.
Yeah, it does apply to her because where she's from, a small village in Ghana is where she actually, where she starts. And that is the home that she loved and was raised in until she was forced out of that home. And she was no longer with the family that she knew there. So that plays a huge part in what she cultivates too when she chooses her profession and has to like reinvent herself. And it plays into her psyche because she is very family oriented and she's very loyal to family, to parents, and she takes that above all. And so that is something like a badge of honor for her to be able to protect people who she wasn't able to protect before. And so as you read the story, you kind of see like what really drives her is to, get her own power back and then also to be able to protect those that she cares about.
For those not familiar with Nena Knight, she's an assassin. You said, who is she assassinating? She's a force for good, correct? So who is she taking out?
So she works for a clandestine organization called the African Tribal Council, and they are a council of very prominent and rich figures from various countries in Africa who have come together with the express purpose of uh, kind of unifying Africa in a way where all of the things that that come from Africa stay in Africa, and like they become like, the the lords of their own things rather than farming it out to other countries and things. So they're also trying to regain Africa's power back and move it from being like a third world continent or whatever. And so in order to do that, there are people who oppose that, and
Ooh.
people who are very selfish and want to just keep all of the winnings to themselves. The tribe, what they're called for short, they need an enforcement group. They need people to take out the people that they need to be taken out, the ones who are against their cause. And so Nena is part of this group, and she is the head of this group. And she dispatches these people, which is what they call, taking them out. And so it's a group, a team that she's very proud of. It's a team she trained for. And so because they are there with the express purpose of, taking out like the bad people who they deem bad, then, that kind of gives her a little bit of grace for, killing people, I guess, in her eyes.
Right. Now, how sustainable is Nena Knight? And I ask that because you come up with a character. Many people come up with characters. And, Travis McGee had a very long run. Jason Bourne did. Jack Ryan has, and so on. But there are some characters who kind of fulfill a certain time frame, and
Mhm.
there's not other places to go with it. Or you have a novelist who says, I want to invent another character now, not just a subsidiary character, tertiary character, but a new lead character in an entirely new series. So, are you thinking of Nena Knight in terms of a lifelong engagement, or are you thinking she might be there for 3 to 6 books, and then I might invent a different character? Is it even
Right.
possible to
Well,
answer that?
yeah, well, sort of. Well, so the decision to only be 3 books right now is my publisher's decision. So they're the ones that said, we only want like 3 right now. But that doesn't mean that they won't come back and say, hey, can you give us 2 more? And I'd be happy to, because I think that Nina is as sustainable as Jason Bourne. She can go on different missions. She can have, there's so many things that she could do within the tribe. There's so many ways that she can grow within herself, and there's so many people that she can help internationally and nationally that it'll be very easy to come up with things that she can be doing. So she could go on. It's just up to, it's not my choice. I would love to because I love the universe. But then, also understand that my publishers tend to like 3 and done. 3 is the max, and then we move on to something else.
But if Nina catches fire, if your TV series catches fire and it's like we can't get enough of Nina Knight, your publisher, your agent, your publisher has a change of heart, correct?
Mhm. And I'll be happy for it if they have a change of heart. That would be great.
So Nina inspires you. Talk about Nina in terms of how she inspires you. I mean, you sit down each day,
Mhm.
presumably each day at the keyboard. We'll get into your writing regimen a little bit later. But you
Uh-huh.
sit down, and are you inspired by? Do you just feel like I have a lot to do with Nina? I have a lot to tell about Nina.
I definitely was when I was writing the 3 books. So now that I've written, my standalone and I have like some others, then Nina has kind of, she's subsided a little bit. She's gone to sleep. She's on vacation. But I do think about her, probably, yeah, I do think about her every day a little bit because she is someone that was with me for so many years. Before I was writing, I was thinking about before I was writing this specific book, I mean, or her first book, I was always thinking about her because I was always trying to come up with what kind of character, what kind of personality, what is the motivation that she has. So she was always very much in my mind. And she is a character that was really a character born of my heart, of everything that I'm not. Like she's very athletic and I'm not athletic at all. And I like the way she handles things. So she is always on my mind, and she definitely inspires me in that. Um, Even when she's afraid of something, she kind of like buck ups and she goes for it and she does what she has to do, regardless of whether or not she wants to or if she's too afraid to. She just goes and does it, and I appreciate that in her, and I appreciate her inner strength, and then I also appreciate like the vulnerabilities that she has, that she begins to express as she meets the various people who remind her of her humanity. Because when we initially meet Nina, she's very robotic and she's devoid of emotions because she's cut out that part of her. And so I'm inspired by her allowing people in to kind of reshape her and to really refill that well that had been emptied so long ago.
So you've got your third novel written as well, then in the Nena Knight series. And can you tell us the title?
The title of the third one is They Come at Night.
They Come at Night. That's right. I did see that on your website, but is it not actually published yet, is it?
Oh, it is.
You got all three out now.
Yeah, all three are
Okay,
out.
you fulfilled the obligation to the publisher. So what are you working on now?
So all three are out, and then just last year, my first standalone, which you mentioned, Not What She Seems, that was what came out last year, which is a psychological suspense. So that character is very different from Nina and has a very different skill set than Nina does. So that was interesting. And so I'm kind of doing the standalone thrillers right now before I jump back into a series or action thriller or something like that. I needed to cleanse my palette and really think again about a character that can sustain, like you had said before, three or more books. And I haven't thought
Yes.
of that one yet. Yeah.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So, um, when did you realize writing was your life force? Or am I overstating that?
No, no, you're not. And a lot of authors, writers will say they really, it's ever since they were kids. And so that when you say that, it kind of sounds cliche, but it is really true for me. My parents weren't together when I was young, and so my mom was a single mom. And so the thing that got me through being, an only child and a latchkey kid, if you remember that term, uh,
Hmm.
coming home while she's at work was to be able to read and to be able to eventually write. And so those are the things that really got me through some very lonely times. And I remember when I was reading books, especially like Christopher Pike and R.L. Stine and stuff like that, I was so amazed at the worlds that they could take me to and just kind of like put me in those worlds and the feelings that they would incite in me, terror and awe and all of this other stuff. And I wanted to be able to create that, on my own for myself. And so that's what started me writing was I want to write these things that make myself and maybe other people, if anyone else reads it, feel as excited and all immersed into this story as I feel when I'm reading other stories.
So when you meet somebody and they
Mhm.
say, "What do you do?" and you say, "I'm a novelist," and they say, "What kind of novelist?" What do you
Mhm.
what do you say?
That's funny that you asked me that because I went to the eye doctor today and I had that exact conversation. When people ask that, it's like I say I'm a writer and I don't know how people will take it because people think about very many things, when you say you're a writer, and so you've got to get into that explanation, and then they want to know if you're published, and then they want to know, do I know anything of yours? And I'm like, how would I know? I'm not you. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know. This is the name of it. And so that's what I do. I tell them that I write thrillers and crime, action thrillers, and psychological suspense. That's what I tell them. And if they're a little bit older and nice people, then I might warn them, because they always then say, "Oh, I'm going to check out your books." But I have to give the older people a little bit of warning that, hey, Nena Knight is it's a hard book, and so don't get mad at me when you read it and you have to like clutch your pearls or something like that. So
Well, when you say a hard book, what do you mean by that?
by hard book, I mean like there are, there's violence, on the page, and there's some situations that Nina is in as a child that, could be very difficult for some people to read. It was definitely difficult to write, but that's what I mean by a hard book. It's a difficult book. It has some really dark moments, but it has some really, really light moments, and those dark moments are what eventually create how, who Nina is, and foster in the light moments that she will have eventually. So that's what I try to kind of warn them a little bit
Fair
about.
warning, right? Fair warning.
Fair warning.
Um, so tell us about the creation of Nina Knight in terms of, some people create characters and they dope out that character in great detail ahead of time. They just write and write about the character, not for the novel, well, ultimately for the novel, but they're exploring they're exploring, trying to figure out who is this character. I've got the elements of it, but I've got to really flesh this character out to understand her before I can write about her. Did you take that approach, or was Nina something that really kind of presented itself in your subconscious and then eventually conscious mind?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think that when she first came to my mind all the way back in 2011. And I knew that I wanted to write a story about a woman. I wanted to write in the subgenre that I love to read and watch, movies and TVs, which is action thrillers and like really scary stuff, really hardcore stuff, right? And I wanted to write that kind of story, and I wanted to write that story for a character that people wouldn't expect to be the protagonist of a story like that. Especially, I wanted to merge my Ghanaian culture in with that story. So she started to come to me, and I always knew that she was going to be a really strong, powerful woman. Initially, she was going to be like the head of some like organized crime syndication and or syndicate, sorry. And then I was like, no, that's not what I'm feeling for her. So over the years, and I didn't actually start writing Her Name is Night until probably late 2018, early 2019. So all those years, she had been kind of like percolating in my head, and I didn't write anything much about her. I just let it like kind of sit until I was really ready to sit down and start writing again. And I was like, I think she's ready. Then it just kind of came forth. So I don't have like a whole bunch of like character sketches where at least initially, where I'm writing out like, oh, they like this, and they act this way. It really comes organically as I'm writing, the way I feel out the character is going to be. Yeah.
How did you develop your writing skills? Once you decided you wanted to be a writer, obviously people say write, just write and write and write, and you get better at it, of course. But were there certain things that you did, or certain turning points in your career where you made a quantum leap forward with your writing skills?
Yeah, so honestly, when I got out of high school at that time, it was hard to, get into writing as we know it, to be a published author, a traditionally published author at that. We didn't have social media like that, so there was no way to learn. And so then I taught English for all those years, because I was like, if I'm not going to be able to write, then I'm going to teach about writing. And so I think that teaching others, students about writing, about the love of literature, exploring all the different kinds of literature, and having them write themselves in their voices, that started to help mold me into the writer that I am now, and to also discipline me in how to receive feedback from like my publishers and things like that. And during that time, I had really put down writing. Because my family was in the military at that time. So when, I eventually moved to South Carolina, and in, 2018, when I started to write, Nena Knight, that's when I sat down. I was like, you know what? I have to get back writing again because something is missing from my life. And this is it. I need to do the thing that I've always wanted to do. And so that's when I really sat down. And so all those years of teaching about it, of thinking about it, just kind of culminated in that. And I started writing. And then after that, I, took some classes just because I always want to refresh and see like what's new because I had been out of the whole scene for so many years. Uh, Social media is now here. So like there's so many like workshops and classes and things like that. So, I was taking those just to kind of like hone up and get myself up to date about like what's in and how people, the different ways that you can write and stuff like that. But really, I'll have to say teaching it is what kind of gave me the way that I write now, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, in fact, the Poynter Institute, which is a journalism think tank, I remember,
Mhm.
um, I forget her name, but her last name was Brown, and she had said, and this always stuck with me. She said, "It's amazing how much you learn when you have to teach."
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I found that to be the case because I was the writing and reporting coach at the time for the company I was working with, the newspaper company I was working with, and you think you know a lot about your profession and you do, but when you have to teach, you start to do a lot more exploring and start taking a more granular approach to a lot of things. Was there a I mean, you're still young, but I'm just curious about if there was a you laugh about that. Nobody thinks they're young anymore. I don't know what that's about, but nobody thinks they're young. Um, was there a turning point in your career in terms of just something happened, or you? Oh, let me give you an example. I had a author on the podcast, and I happened to bring up the name Milan Kundera, and she was like, "Oh my God, he was so influential for me. I didn't realize you could do with a novel the things that he did until I read that, and it just completely opened up my world." And I thought, "Wow, I can write novels in ways that I didn't really realize before." Did you ever have a moment? It doesn't have to be that kind of moment, but was there a turning point, or maybe even a writing coach along the way who got you oriented a little bit differently, or was it all very, brick by brick by brick?
It was all pretty much brick by brick. I mean, there are several authors who inspired me when I was just reading them. And, like I said, I just really, really wanted to be able to, I loved the way that they write. Like Toni Morrison, Walter Mosley, had some or has some like really, really great books that when I read one, especially I think the one that really stood out to me was I think it was Fortunate Son, was the title, I think. And that book just totally like rocked my world because I was just like, this is so amazing. And then also, I'm sure you've heard from many other authors, Stephen King. Now, I say Stephen King because the way that he writes and the way that he blends, like literary prose with these characters that, you feel very strongly about whether you like them or hate them, and then with a story that really grips you, and then adding in the horror. I thought that that was like genius, and so I take from all of those people like just their style and how they do it. I'm very much somebody who, when whatever I'm reading, I'm like really dissecting it and analyzing not just like story really or whether the story is good or not, but like how they went about doing it, or if they're using first person or third, if they're using flashbacks or whatever the case is. And so all of those books that I've read, are always inspiring to me because I just am so fascinated by how people choose to write their stories. And so that's what I try to do, like with myself when I'm thinking about a story, when I'm starting one, I'm like, how am I going to write, how I'm going to tell this story? And what is it going to really impact the reader in what way, and so that's what I kind of play around with whenever I'm thinking about like how I'm going to write it, and so yeah, so those it's really been brick by brick for me. There's nothing super hugely like profound that happened that made me want to just write and stuff like that, but there are definitely people along the way who I just really admired, and I just wanted to be able to emulate that kind of feeling for my readers.
So, you mentioned that Nina
Mhm.
Nena Knight comes from a small village in Ghana.
Mhm.
That's where your parents hail from. Have you visited Ghana? Do you make trips to Ghana? Do you have family there? Did you
Oh, yeah.
go there for research purposes?
Yeah. So I was born here. My parents came here to attend college. And then they had me, and then I went back and lived with my mother's mom, so my grandmother, in Ghana for a couple of years while my mom finished school. That was actually my first language was not English. It was Ga, which is one of the dialects over there. And so I came back and then pretty much have been raised here. I've been back a couple of times with my father, but then it's been very, very many years since then. So our family, bulk of our family is still there. All of my mom's family, mother and everyone is still there. And she talks to them like every week. And then my mom is here still. So I talk to her often. And so she was really my research guide because my father is no longer with us. So she was really the one that I spoke to when I wanted to. So I already knew like how villages worked and the feel of villages from my own, experience. But when it came to language, because as I was learning the English language, then I forgot the language that I, originally knew. So she's helping me with the language that I use in the books, and she's, kind of helping me with whatever other questions that I really don't know for myself. But yeah, but I definitely want to go back soon. It's expensive to go all the way over there.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely want to go back soon. I have to because, I want to see my grandmother and everything. So we just have to coordinate that. Yeah.
Tell us about Ghana. Are there two or three marks of distinction just to get started here that you would point to? What's Ghana like?
Ghana is hot. Ghana is I loved it. I remember like the beaches and it's just very lush. The city, Accra, which is the capital, the marketplace, that's definitely something that, everyone should experience if you go to Ghana. Ghana is so much very different than what it was when I was there. And it's a really, really like everyone likes to go there in December because then it's not as hot, but that is also like the main vacation spot for very many people in that month of December. And they even have something called Afrochella there. So that's kind of cool. So it's really like coming up with, younger people.
What's Afrocello?
Afrochella, it's like Coachella, but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
version of Coachella. So it's yeah, it's Afrochella, I think it's what it's called. And so yeah, they have that every year. And it's really huge. And so there's Elmina Castle, which is the castle, one of the castles that was used during the enslaved trade. And so that's also something if people were wanting to see something like that, which you can, and so that's there. But there's some forests, which I can't remember the name of them. It starts with a K, but like they are, very beautiful forests that you can go and kind of walk through, and they have trails, and I think that they kind of protect you from whatever animals are in there. But for the most part, yeah. So it's really, it's nice. It can be a little dusty there too, but everyone everywhere has its like good parts and its bad parts. So yeah.
Sure, sure. And I said at the top that the Nina Knight series has been optioned for television.
Mhm.
Has it been decided which platform it will appear on, or is it still in production and being sold? Looking for a platform like Prime or Netflix or whatever?
Yeah, I think at this point they're still looking for a platform. There have been versions of the adapted script, um, but like so they're still trying to like feel out like what writers that they really feel will be a best fit for this kind of story to tell like this kind of story, and then how to tell the story in the best way. So yeah, so those are all the things that like that's the latest that I have heard about it. So everything is still, and then everything got slowed down when they had the
The strike?
The strike, thank you. So
Yeah.
that slowed everything down and made, or at least from what they tell me, made like the studios and everything, they have like their priorities of things that were already in queue by the time that the strike happened. So those are the things that they want to get out. And so yeah, so it's taken a little long. Well, I guess it takes long period. So yeah, it's been slow going. But I try to keep myself. I'm just so thankful that someone wanted to, adapt it, that they liked it so much that they wanted it to be adapted. So that's pretty cool.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is, and so and that it's a really big honor, and it makes me feel good because it was a struggle writing this story, and I didn't know if people would like it. I loved it, and I thought everybody should love it too, but you go through the querying, and you get like a whole lot of rejections of people saying no, and so you're like, maybe it's not as good as I thought, so it's now rewarding to hear people like you tell me that you want to talk to me about the book, and for them to adapt it and stuff like that. It's very like rewarding, and it makes me feel better for all that struggle.
Yeah. Well, tell us about the day that an agent said, "Hey, send me the rest of the manuscript, and hey, let's get on the phone. I'd like to talk to you." Talk to us about that. What was that like? How did it happen?
Sure. So like I said, I started really writing in 2018, and I was like, this is the story of this is like my passion story. I got to get it out, and I'm going to have it all finished by the top of 2020, because that's when I'm going to query. So I gave myself a deadline, which is something I've never done before. And so January 2020 is when I started querying like all these agents that I had researched and thought that they would be a great fit for the novel. And like the rejections just kept, they were coming like immediately. They didn't understand the character, they didn't understand the voice. They just weren't sure. Maybe it was a little too edgy for them, I guess, maybe. I don't know. So it was a whole lot. And so I must have received like nearly 100 rejections. And at that point, I was so devastated by all of these rejections that I was like, well, maybe I'm not good at it and I'm going to quit. And I just nearly quit. And I told one of my writing friends about it, and she was like, hey, there's this grant that you can apply for, which is the Eleanor Taylor Bland Award with Sisters in Crime. Why don't you apply for that? And I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to, because they're not going to like it. Like my writing sucks, but I just couldn't put it down. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to try this one last thing, and then I'm going to quit for real. And so I did. I submitted, and then I forgot about it. That was probably in like February, maybe, that I did that. And so still kept getting rejections. And so it wasn't until May that I got a call from, not a call, an email from Melissa, who was one of the agents that I queried, but I hadn't heard back from her. And at that point, I just chalked it up to, well, she's just not going to answer, because sometimes that's what agents do because they're so like busy, that they don't answer. And so she emailed me and she was like, hey, do you want to jump on a call about the book? And I, at that, remember, I'm thinking like I'm about to quit, right? So at that
Hmm.
point, I was like, oh my gosh, she emailed me. She wants to talk to me so that she could reject me to my face, in my ear. And I was so like, oh my gosh, do they do that now? That's what I thought. I didn't really think that she was going to offer representation. I thought she was just really that cold-hearted that she was going to say it to me, personally. And so I was just like, okay. And so we got on the phone that following week, and she offered, and I just could not believe it. I let all of the other agents that were still out there know that I had received an offer. And then another couple of agents popped in and were like, hey, we'd like to talk to you. So now I had a couple. I don't know where they were before, but yeah. And so I stuck with Melissa, because she was the one that had faith in me, and reached out to me and really wanted to work with me. And I was like, that's so fantastic. And then literally a week after that is when I checked my email, and I see this email, and the email says, you're a winner. And you know that when you get those, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is spam. Like I'm about to like put this in
Right.
junk mail and everything. But then something caught my eye. I think I saw Sisters in there, and I was like, what is this? And so I opened it, and it was the email telling me that I had won the award. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I won this award that I didn't think I was going to win. I got my agent that I never thought I would get because I thought everybody hated me. I guess I will keep on writing. And that's
I guess so. Wow. So all of a sudden, I mean, all these rejections,
Mhm.
Melissa gets a hold of you, and then next thing you know, there's another agent or two that wants to talk to you.
Mhm.
How do you account for that? Do you have do you think it was just happenstance, or did you do anything differently, like you had a world beater cover letter?
No, because I really suck at cover letters, and synopsis and all of that. I'm really bad about, with those. I'm the worst at selling, my wares, basically. I don't know what it was. I just hope that I guess it was the first, couple of pages. I don't remember how many I sent her. But I think I initially sent her the whole entire manuscript. So
Right off the bat.
right off the bat, yeah. So luckily she was, that engaged her so much. Now with the others, I'm not too sure. It could just be, because maybe they were already going to reach out to me, but then they jumped on it when they saw that I had an offer, or maybe because I had the offer, that's when they were like, hey, let me try too, or whatever. They took a second look at it. I don't know, but I appreciate them doing that. It made me feel really, really good after months of feeling really, really bad. And, that story of mine is not, I also know that it doesn't happen to everyone. I was very lucky in winning the award and, an agent. And then not long after that, getting a book deal and then the offer for adapting the book. All of that happened within like, months. So
And the book deal
always
was for three. They said we would like you to do three a package of three novels.
no, so what's funny is, so when I initially wrote Nena Knight, I intended it to be a standalone book because I was like, if I get an agent and a deal off of this one book, like I'm good. Like I'll be fine with that. So when my agent was preparing to sub it out to editors and things, she said, what do you think about expanding it into a series? And I was like, hell yeah, I'll do that. Like, of course, because after I wrote the story, I felt like, Nina's story wasn't entirely done. Like I could do so much more with her. Um, and so my initial deal was for like a two-book deal, but Melissa already talked to the editor, letting them know that we really wanted like a three-book arc if it had to stop at three books. So yeah, so initially I got the two-book deal for the first two books, and then another deal after that with the same publisher for another two books, which was my number three, They Come at Night, and then my first standalone, Not What She Seems.
Wow, what a score that was. Now you've won several awards for your novels. Which one meant the most to you? Was it the one you referenced, the from Sisters in Crime, or was there another award that you won that is the most meaningful?
Yeah, well, the Eleanor Taylor Bland one is the one that I actually won. The other ones were I made finalist for, like, so the
Oh, I
Anthony,
see.
yeah,
Gotcha.
and the
But if
library.
you're a finalist for the Pulitzer, that's bigger than winning an award, a thousand other awards. Um, but
Mhm.
was there one in particular that you thought that this is the one, boy, if I could win this one, that would take me to a new place?
No, I don't think so because even at that time and now, like I just appreciate being like nominated, and that people like, the books. But like think about it now, I don't know. Maybe the National Book Award, that would
Oh
be
yeah, well, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
that would be great. But
It would be awesome. Talk
mm,
about your. I'm sorry. Go ahead and finish that thought.
oh no, I was just agreeing with you that that would be awesome. Mhm.
Well, let's talk about your writing regimen. So you're in production mode. You're writing your next novel. What is your routine? Are you morning, evening? How much time do you put in? What kind of method do you use? Some people have a writing room. Some people like to move around. What's your style?
Let's see. My style tends to change from book to book. I am very, I think, frenetic with my style. So whenever I'm asked, I get a little embarrassed because I'm honestly a procrastinator. And And that's because I write maybe at the very last minute, but that's because I'm thinking about the story the whole entire time, and I'm really like obsessing over the story in my head. So the story is writing itself in my head, and I'm, getting
Oh. So you
learning.
incubate
Yes,
your,
thank you. That's a good word. Yes.
and then so it actually takes formation
Mhm.
in your conscious and subconscious mind until you're ready to pull the trigger on it.
Yes, I can't write unless I really feel like I know the story. And I've ironed out like a whole bunch of like big plot things. So I can write very fast once the story is in my head. And I don't outline because when I outline, it makes me feel like I've already just told the story and then it becomes boring for me to write it. But I know that outlines are very good and important because sometimes when I have a big plot hole after I've like thought about it, but I missed that thing and I've written the whole thing, then I got to go back and fix it. So I definitely think that if people can outline, definitely do that. But for me, I have to like you said, incubate for a really long time and really get like really settled with the story and really feel excited about it. I'm more of
So,
a
but that's the story. So you incubate, you have the story, you're comfortable with it. At that point, are you then, hey, now I'm ready to write in, and you have a daily routine of X number of words or X amount of time?
Yeah, so once I've sat down and I'm about to write, I typically try to do it in the morning. So from the time that I sit down at the desk, like maybe about 8 o'clock until about 2 o'clock, then that's when I'm really working on it because that's when I feel like the freshest. After two, I'm kind of like done with everything and I just kind of want to like lounge around. And when so that's what I do. And I don't write unless I really am well, if my deadline is like right around the corner, then I'm writing every day. Other than that, I'm not writing every day. I write when I really feel it, or else it becomes like boring. Whatever I write will be boring. That's how I feel. So I really write when I'm in the mood, and I don't write linearly. I write scenes and out of order. Does that sound
Hmm.
crazy? I told you it was frenetic.
No, no. Actually, I've heard of that before, but it seems that most people are fixated on the idea that they have to be linear with their writing,
Can't do that.
and and I think that's why a lot of them get stuck, because if you're stuck there, why not jump to something else that you feel motivated by and get
Yes.
that? It's almost like modular construction.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, I just could not, if I had to write like in a straight, like it would be boring to me. And oftentimes when I write out of order, those things that have taken place further down motivate and inspire me of something that I needed in the beginning. And so that really kind of helps me out with those big holes that I have or the things that I haven't quite figured out. And then also, one thing when I'm writing, I use Scrivener. I don't know if you ever heard it. Have you
Oh
heard of?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a writing. It's like a word processing program, but it's for
Mhm.
writers, isn't it?
It's for writers and it's got a lot of bells and whistles, but I use like just the basic one. I don't know anything about the bells and whistles, but I use Scrivener because it allows me to write out of order. It's like an electronic post-it board. So you can like just write scenes and then you can like move the scenes around to where you need them to be. So I can't draft in Word because if I'm not writing, in order, then it's going to be hard to maneuver the document that way. So that's why I write in Scrivener. And then once I've done all of that and have written my draft in Scrivener, then I, compile it. It compiles your document all together and puts everything in order, and it transfers to Word. So I do all of my editing and everything in Word because that now I'll go and work linearly from the beginning to end, editing and filling those plot holes and whatever else mess that I made.
Hmm. What do you see as your obligations to your readers?
My obligation is to tell them a really good story, uh, and to give them characters that are really going to make them like love or hate. I want them to really feel some kind of way about the characters. Um, and then just really enjoy the story that I'm telling, no matter how audacious it may be. I just want them to just totally immerse in it and be able to see it because I'm a visual writer. So I hope that I'm writing well enough so that, they can envision all of these things happening as they're reading it. So yeah, so that is, my obligation to them is to give them a really great story with some really impactful characters, and then it's something that they can see in their mind as they're reading it.
So you mentioned a visual writer, and you've been optioned for television. Do you write? Did you do you write with the idea in mind that I'd like this to end up on the screen, or are you the kind of writer who, when you're thinking about a scene, you actually see it? You try to visualize it rather than simply find the words to describe it.
Yeah, I definitely try to visualize it. Do I think about whether I could see it on the screen? Maybe I do, but I think because I incubate, now I'm going to use your word all the time, but like because I think about that story all the time, it already comes as a visual thing. It already comes like plays as a movie to me because it's constantly going on in my mind and I can see how I want things to be. And so then that translates into the words. So I think that's why my writing can be visual to other people because I do visualize it for myself for all that length of time. And I don't write intentionally wanting it to be like on TV. That was a nice part because I never thought that anybody would want that for my stories. But like I could understand why people can visualize it because I do see my stories in my mind as a running movie. If that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Um, Interesting. So, yeah, I asked you about your obligations to the readers, what you feel, but are there any obligations you feel based on your being a woman of color and a writer of color, or do you feel that, look, I don't need any strictures put upon me. I write for the exhilaration of it and the fun of it and the psychic rewards of it, or do you feel like I do, as a black woman, there's certain things that I want to communicate or I feel like I really am obliged to communicate.
Right. Yeah. I would say all of the above. For the most part, I don't want any I don't want anything put on me. I want to just be a writer like, everyone else. I definitely know that, especially as a Black woman author who writes in this genre, crime, but then especially action thrillers and stuff, there's not a whole lot of us who write in that specific subgenre. And so I realized that, and I really want to make that more of the norm. And there are many Black and other races of authors, women authors who write in other subgenres of mystery and crime. And I really would like, and I'm proud of us all, and so I would like us to be more of the norm. And so sometimes in my stories, I might have like a little bit of like maybe racial issue or something, but it's not anything that, it's not prominent in the story because my main goal is to just tell a good story, and then whatever kind of filters in. I do think that, as a Black woman, I definitely don't take what I have for granted. I definitely want to represent as well as I can, but I also want to write something where everyone can read it and relate to it in some way, and then be like, and you know what, this is a Black woman too. Like that's really great. And then it becomes like normal to see us writing in all these different ways.
I heard you use the word audacious. So you consider yourself an audacious writer?
I think some of the ideas that I come up with are can be audacious in my stories. Yeah.
You know why I ask you that is because I think one of the big issues that face novelists is that they try too often to sound like a novelist, or they think I can't do that because that's too audacious, or that's just too abstract. And so I think a lot of us cut ourselves off at the pass rather than just saying, there's people out there who are audacious. They do things that are surprising or offbeat or abstract. Do you wrestle with yourself on that front, or do you really are you the type who just feels that, look, if I feel it, I'm going to write it, and I don't restrain myself?
Yeah, if I feel that I'm going to write it, I don't restrain myself. But then if I reread it and I'm like, but it has to make sense with the story, right? So I'm not just going to throw something in. And I really try to stay away from like reinforcing any like negative stereotypes. So if something that I'm writing is audacious, I do think about who it is that is, performing those audacious acts or who's saying what, because I don't want to reinforce stereotypes that might already be out there. I already know that some readers are coming in reading my book with certain stereotypes, and also knowing that they're reading an author who is Black and female, they're coming in with certain notions. So I do think about, whatever, well, I'm going to put this thing in. Now, who's going to do it? Now, how can I make sure that the focus is on, this audacious thing that's happening and not, oh yeah, that's what I expect of people like them or something like that, if that makes sense. So that's in that way is how I restrain myself to make sure that whoever is performing those audacious things or whatever is not something that's going to reinforce a negative stereotype. But other than that, I don't restrain myself. Now, if it's too outlandish for the story that I'm trying to tell overall, then I will probably be like, no, I'll save that for something else. And then I'll try to think about another story that in which that thing can fit.
So, what about those stereotypes? So, you're saying if they know that you're a Black woman author and you've got a Black character, or forget the character for a minute, just a Black female author, the stereotype being what? Angry Black woman?
Angry Black woman, or if or like urban settings, and maybe they're talking a certain kind of way. Maybe they are like extra violent.
Nina
Maybe
is killing people after all. She's an
Nina is
assassin.
killing people. She's an assassin, but she's an assassin, but she's an assassin. And also her lifestyle, is very is different than what maybe people might expect. I don't know, right? And I also, it's like I don't write and I love romance books, but I don't write romance books. And that might be something that was expected of someone, who's an English teacher and she's a Black woman. Oh, these are the types of books that they read. And so you should write that.
Or
No, I
just women, or just
don't
women.
just women. Yeah.
If it's a woman, I think sometimes there's an expectation that there's going to be romance.
Yes, yes, or something like that. And I mean, I don't want to write, I mean, like romance is fantastic for those people in which like they can write that well. I can't write that well. So I go to what excites me, and that's like shooting and killing people in books, not in real life. So, like that's what I write about. And I also am very, for example, I'll give you another example. So like if I'm writing something where, the people have like servers, house people, house staff or whatever, like you've got to think
Mhm.
about making sure that the house staff isn't populated by one certain kind of race because the perception is those are the people who serve. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
So those are the things that I keep in mind as I'm writing. And anything can happen. It could be a wild story, but I want to make sure that I'm not feeding into, oh, these are the kinds of people who would do this kind of thing. I want to like put that, spin that around and make it something else.
Did having children change your writing,
Um,
or did it remain the same? I mean, having children. I mean, you write about it's action, it's adventure, it's violence. Having children usually doesn't feed that. I don't know if it had any effect on you having children. I know, like for instance, John Irving, his
mhm.
books are full of children.
I,
Almost all his books are full of children,
oh,
which
okay.
is kind of rare. Well, in my reading, anyway, in my menu of reading, it's kind of rare.
Mhm.
I was really leading up to this question, and I'm not sure that you would have an answer for it. How do you expect your writing to change as you age? Yeah, again, I see you as a young person. You're young. You still have a lot of track ahead of you, God
Yeah.
willing.
Mhm.
And we change with age, and writing styles can change and all. And I don't know whether you have any inkling as to how well, whether past is prologue and maybe past is like I've never really changed my style. This is it's who I am. But if it was going to change in the future, maybe it would be like this or that. I realize that's a maybe an impossible question to answer, but I want to throw it out there in case you have some thoughts on it.
Yeah, so yeah, being a mother didn't have any effect really, except for when I came back to wanting to write after the kids, have happened and it's been some years. I really dove into to realizing my dream of publishing. And I'm saying this isn't quite answering your question, but I'm leading up to it. Because I knew that I had kids that are, watching me. And I knew that coming out of, being a kid myself, especially a kid of immigrant parents, being a creative is not one of the jobs that they want you to have. They don't really understand being a creative, right? You've got to have, be a doctor or an accountant or something like that. And so I wanted to show my kids that, you can be a creative because my kids are very creative in the things that they do. So you can be a creative and you can have a job that is outside what people consider the norm if you're dedicated to it, and if you like really really want it, you'll always work at it no matter all these things that are happening. So I wanted to be the model to do that. So in that way, I think that my writing, my kids shaped my writing in that I'm going to show them that you can do this thing that you really really want to do, but you have to like be ready for the hard work. And you have to want it more than anyone else. And so that's what I've been able to show them, and hopefully have made them a little bit more comfortable with branching out and doing the things that they want to do that might not be what traditionally we would expect them to do. How
You
I,
know, so
sorry, go ahead.
Let me just, I want to pause on the children for a second because so many people decide not to have children these days. I mean, birth rates in countries all over the world are negative,
Mhm.
like declining populations. Why did you decide to have children?
Well, because, 20 something years ago, it wasn't that case. And so that was, I wasn't even thinking about that. When I had them, when we had them, 20 something years ago. Now, if I, was coming out and trying to decide, if it's time to have kids, I probably would wait a little bit longer because the situation in the world now is way different than it was 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Now I would want to get some things are more expensive now. I would want to make sure that I have more things in place now before I start a family than back then. So definitely I would probably take a little bit longer now if I was like even younger now and starting off in the world. But back then, I wasn't really, it was just, we were married and then they just come and then, now you have a family and you're just dealing with it and life as it goes. Yeah.
And when I asked you that question, I think you were heading towards what your impressions might be in terms of how your writing might change over time.
Right. And I do put like John Irving, like you mentioned, I do put kids, I don't put a whole lot of kids in my stories, but I do tend to put like a kid or two because I do like the relationship between kids or like teens or whatever and older people and how they interact and how they can kind of like make the character, especially if it's a tough character, how they can kind of bring out the sensitive side of that character. So that's why I might, put a kid in there because who doesn't love a cute kid saying really funny things that just kind of
Hmm.
like hurt your feelings. So how I want to write, I mean, I still want to be able to write the way I write now, which is very family centric and very like I still like my dark writing and I am and stuff like that. How I want to keep writing like that. But what else do I want? Yeah, I can't really answer how else I want to write.
Let's jump to your bio.
Yeah.
25 or 30 years hence, you're audacious. We've already established that you're audacious. So when you read your bio, your children read your bio, I read your bio in 25 or 30 years.
Mhm.
What do you want that bio to say?
Other than I won a National Book Award.
That there's one that's audacious. Okay, so you've won the National Book Award,
Yeah.
and what are some of the other components of that bio that you? I mean, this is a writer's license here, right? you
Mhm.
can, your perfect, not even necessarily perfect movie, but a great movie. What kind of components do you want? What do you want to, I guess really what I'm saying, what do you want to accomplish before you hang up your word processor?
Yeah, so I definitely want to accomplish many more books in different genres because I read widely. And so I want to write widely. I don't want to just be confined to thrillers. I want to write a horror. I want to write contemporary. I just want to like try all these different things. And so I would want that to be in my bio, like all these different genres that I tried, and I want to be successful in them. So I hope that the readers will remain with me on the ride as I try these, multiple different things. And then I want to eventually, I think I wouldn't mind trying my hand at script writing. But I have to learn that first. So I'm not just gonna write something because I think, oh, I can write a movie script or a TV script, but like I'm gonna actually take classes in that and bone up on that before I actually attempt it. But I would like that to happen, and that would be cool. And not to adapt my own books because that's too hard, but just to, you know, just
You
to
know, it's amazing how many novelists out there who I know, I mean, I know of them and I like their writing or love their writing. And then when I end up reading maybe their obituary later or a profile about them, they did a lot of screenwriting that I had no awareness of. I had no idea that they were doing that. And it wasn't adapting their novels, as you say, they were just doing something, just something completely different. And it's a good paying gig. You know, books don't always make that much money, but you can get paid a good deal of money to write screenplays, especially ones that become successful.
yeah. Yeah,
So
so that's the success that I want. That's what I want in my bio before I hang it up. I just want to be able to do all the things because now I'm able to do it, right? It's been 20 plus years that I've had to set that aside. And so now I just want to be able to do all the things and I don't want to be deterred in whatever it is that I want to try. I want to be able to try that and not be constrained.
Well, Yasmin Angoe, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. I really appreciate you taking the time and being as open as you have been. And to our listeners, I want to point out that the URL to Yasmin's website is in the episode notes. You can learn, you can see her books there. You can buy her books. You can learn more about her there. Yasmin, thanks a million for coming on the program and sharing yourself.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike, for having me.